Ah. Ah, darkness, my old friend. We meet again. Time to take this down to review. Hello, I'm Henry R. Mockingbird, your host with the mustache here, and welcome to part 2 of Memory Lane Month. Might as well continue with the second movie I've ever covered on 20th Century Reviews. Yes, we are diving into the world of Vilo Vance. Who is Vilo Vance? Vilo Vance is an aristocratic detective who was featured in 12 books written by S.S. Van Dyne. Vilo Vance has appeared in all forms of media, including books, radio, and of course, movies, with Vilo Vance being played by a different actor in each and every movie. Kind of like James Bond in a way. I, of course, reviewed the 4th movie in an ongoing series rather than the first one. Why did I start with number 4 rather than movie number 1? Well, it's pretty damn simple. I had just seen this movie for the first time on YouTube, and I needed another film to cover for 20th Century Reviews. And back then, I was mostly picking movies out of a hat. So, my God, it's a wonder that this series lasted as long as it did, given the decision-making skills I had back then. But you know what? Enough horsing around. Let us review Kennel Murderer Case. When Archico has been discovered dead, locked inside his own bedroom, the police consider it to be suicide. But Detective Vilo Vance believes otherwise. When the coroner comes over to examine the body, he confirms that it was murder. But which subject was the murderer? Was it Hilda Lake? Was it the secretary? Was it the cook? Was it Doris? Or did the butler do it? So, what are my thoughts on the kennel murderer case 6 years later? Well, I like it. The film is directed by the Steven Spielberg of the Golden Age of Hollywood, Michael Curtiz, who also directed Casablanca and The Adventures of Robin Hood starring Errol Flynn. And the film itself was based on a book by the same name by S.S. Van Dyne. And the Kennel murder case was the first in the Vilo Vance series to be filmed by Warner Brothers, as the earlier Vance films were made by Paramount. The later films in the series were either made by Warner Brothers, Paramount, or MGM, and had a different actor playing Vilo Vance each time. Rather, it was Paul Lucas, Basil Rathbone, or Warrant Williams. When the film finally released, it got glowing reviews from critics, with film historian William K. Everson calling it a masterpiece, and it was ranked with Alistair Slim's murder mystery called Green for Danger. The film even got a remake titled Calling Vilo Vance, and director Michael Curtis used a lot of editing techniques. For example, we see them set up a split screen where we see a call between the district attorney and Vilo Vance. They also use a lot of side wipes, particularly with the scene in where they're checking everybody's fingerprints. These techniques would later be used in stuff like Star Wars, and there's even some miniature shots of the outside, and we even get a shot where we see a dude who's obviously projected into the miniature. Let's talk about the mystery. Now, the mystery kind of plays out like a game of Clue. You get a little bit of information each time, and like any good mystery, it keeps you guessing as to who the murderer is. And the way they explain how the murderer pretty much murdered his victim is so clever that I'm just going to let Vilo Vance say it himself.
I think I can show you how Brisbane Cole used this fishing tackle. He started for Chicago and merely to provide an alibi. He had other plans in this room. Watch this. Notice the bent pin which is hooked on the bolt handle? This is attached to the string I am now pulling through the keyhole. If you follow the string, you will see that it passes around a pin in the wall. This acts as a pulley, and is also attached to a string passing through the keyhole. You see, the bolt is now being forced into its socket.
Upon my word.
I now pull the first string through the keyhole, and then the second string. And with it comes the pin, leaving no evidence. Now let me in.
First, let us talk about the characters. First, there is Art Chicot, who is the most hateable, loathsome man you will ever see in your life. And I'm not even over-exaggerating. Every character in this film hates him. Hell, he is so freaking hateable that you feel no remorse when he actually dies.
He's an asshole.
And then there's Vilo Vance, played by William Powell, who's slick, witty, and is as cool as a cucumber. My favorite scene with him is when he's trying to explain how the murder was done, and instead of, drawing the whole estate, he builds an elaborate model. It kind of reminds me of when Doc Brown did the same thing in Back to the Future. He's also kind of similar to James Bond, only if James Bond was a detective and not a spy. And unlike James Bond, where he traveled the world, Viola Vance usually tends to stay in New York. And then there's Viola Vance's sidekick, Sergeant Heath, who's always willing to take the easy way out and not put any work into solving the mystery. He's played by Eugene Pellette, who played Friar Tuck in Adventures of Robin Hood. Outside of being a moocher, Sergeant Heath is a bit of a bumbling buffoon, always bumbling his way through the case until towards the end, where he ends up taking all of the credit despite him doing very little work. And then there's the district attorney, Markham, who's very dedicated and is willing to go at any lengths to find the truth. Both him and Viola Vance love the thrill of a challenge. Up next is Art Chicot's secretary, Raymond, who's both greedy and delusional and is played by Ralph Morgan, who, outside of having many credits to his name, is also the brother of Frank Morgan, who played the Wizard in The Wizard of Oz, as well as several other characters in that movie. And then there's the Chinese cook, Liang, played by James Lee. And Liang is quite progressive for 1933 standards. I mean, he's not stereotypical at all. Quite the opposite, in fact. He's intelligent, he's really deep into his Asian culture, and he doesn't speak in an Asian broken dialect. In fact, he fakes a Asian accent whenever someone's around. And when Viola Vance approaches him, he says, "You can drop the accent." Hilda Lake, who happens to be Art Chicot's niece, is one classy, glamorous gal. We also find out that Art Chicot is in control of her bank account, showing that women back then could not take control of their bank accounts. Yikes. Hilda Lake is played by Mary Astor, who, by the way, also is best known for her role in The Maltese Falcon. The Kennel murder case is a really good whodunit sort of film. I'd say if you want a good introduction to both Viola Vance and the murder mystery genre as a whole, I'd say give this one a look. 5 gold stars. Well, the case of the Kennel Pool murder case is officially closed. Tune in next time, where I will be jumping down the rabbit hole in Alice in Wonderland. Well, until the next review, I'm Henry R. Mockingbird, your host with the mustache, signing off.